correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm Steve, and I've got a guest with me tonight, although the other Steve is busy with some prior commitments, so he won't be joining us. But before I get into our guest and our cool kind of talking around thing for the week, I want to let you all know about another podcast here on the D20 Radio Network, and that would be the Opcast, which is it's a podcast around the Trinity Continuum games from White Wolf and Onyx Path, games like Aberrant, Aeon, Adventure, all those sort of, that modern, I believe Josh Heath is one of the hosts, and a couple other people. Really cool show if you're into those games. So check that out. You can find that pretty much anywhere you find podcast. Again, that's the Opcast, OPcast, however you want to say it. There'll be a link in the show notes like always. And, other than that, if you're looking for other podcasts to listen to aside from ours, check the link in our show notes for the D20 Radio Discord. And there's a link to all the shows on the network on that Discord channel. And then I know there's a link to the D20 Network website, which I believe is under construction. So that link may not currently work, but I'll have to check into that and those kind of things. But anyway, this week we're going to have a guest, that being Adam from Bright Sun Games, who I've had the privilege of meeting the last 2 years at GamerNationCon. And he also happens to have just released a system agnostic generator, which is actually his third such product, and it's called Deeper Dungeons. So, Adam, welcome to Me and Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, not a problem. So, I mean, I'm right, this is your third based on the information you sent me. This is a fantasy one. You have one that is for, like, sci-fi and far future, and one for cyberpunk?
Yes. Yeah. My first one was for cyberpunk, then sci-fi, and then my newest one is for fantasy.
Okay. So, I mean, where do you want to start here? Do you want to tell us a little bit about them? I know Deeper Dungeons is, it's been out for, as we record, 2 weeks? Not quite?
I think so. Yeah, it's not been out for very long.
Mm-hmm.
Like a week or two at most.
Okay. And the other one's actually, if I'm reading my screen right, okay, that's last update, not release date, but okay. But yeah, so full disclosure for everyone out there, I haven't gotten a chance to read these yet. Adam, you were kind enough to send me, copies of the PDFs, and I did get a chance to skim them, and these are the kind of random tables books that I love. At least based on what I saw.
Great.
Like, I went through, like, just the first few pages of Deeper Dungeons, and it's that in that the first thing you get to is NPC generation. And I would kind of liken it to kind of like those random tables that are the life path generation for Cyberpunk 2020 or Cyberpunk Red, but expanded and designed to make NPCs. And for me, it's not even so much the fact that it's a random table. I will read those and get inspiration and, like, see something and go, oh, wait, this, and I'm off down a track because of one entry in this random table, right? And I don't know if you do that, or, you just love random tables, or am I not understanding your product at this point?
So in the beginning of the books, I have a little description on, like, my inspirations for the books and also sort of how to use them. And it's a product that is just supposed to be like a source of inspiration and also like a help for things like writer's block and stuff. So, it's not a straitjacket. I can't tell you how to use the books. If it's just like, if you just read it and then get inspiration from like one entry in the table, then perfect. Like that's That's all that's necessary. If you're feeling like you need a little bit more help, especially if there is a game that you want to have like a bunch of content for, something like if you're running something like a West Marches game, or if you're running something a little bit more like sandboxy, there can often be this like feeling, this like tendency to want to fill out like everything. Like the players are like walking down the street, but the idea is that that street, like if you were to imagine it, the GM probably has like this really detailed scene of like a bunch of different buildings, and it might be a little bit dreamscapey, where like the signs don't really have words on them and the people don't really have like faces until you really look at them. But the GM has this like, if you're anything like me, I have this like grand idea of how much detail there would be, and like, oh, I wish that the players could just see this like red building in the corner, that like there's something in there. I haven't figured it out yet, but there's something in there, and I wish they would go in there, but I haven't told them it exists, so they don't know to go in there because they don't see it. So, sorry, yes.
No, no, no. I was just saying, it sounds like you're, and I'm much this way. You're an image in your head GM.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've got a lot of my inspiration for games comes from like building justifications to have like cool moments. Like I plan the campaign around like this really cool scene, and I build everything up to it, and I really try to like get it there in some way. Not like shoving the players into it, but like trying to build it such that there could be this great setup for this like cool enemy design that I saw 6 months ago. And I'm like, this enemy needs a lot of buildup. So like I'm gonna design a whole campaign based on the idea that I want like a big scene where they're like fighting this weird the Hydra monster thing with like guns for ears in the middle of like a rainstorm or whatever. I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna fit that in, but like I'll figure it out. And stuff just sort of morphs around that, and then stuff just sort of grows like a sort of crystal growing in a lab, but in my head.
No, no, no. I completely get what you're saying. I wonder too, like I was thinking about this while I was working this evening and going, just because I skimmed over it a little bit at lunch, and one thing that occurred to me that I might do at some point with these books is literally just go to the dollar store, get a pack of index cards, and sit down and make stacks of these NPCs, like basically decks of them, and like, not to steal your thunder, but in deeper dungeons, you have them broken down into like different types. Like there's adventurers and there's artists and intellectuals and numerous other categories. And I'm thinking, why couldn't I just sit down and make a bunch of cards with these semi fleshed out NPCs, right? Don't necessarily have to have stats, but the players want to stop and talk to somebody, and depending on where it is they're at, you grab off the bandits and criminals deck, or the the hunters and gamekeepers deck, so to speak, that you've made. I don't know, have you ever used it that way, or is that kind of my own interpretation of your work?
Like you could use these books in any way you want. There's no wrong way to use it. I'd say that like I like the idea of using cards. I tend to just have like a notebook that I write stuff down in. But yeah, no, totally. I'm currently running a Werewolf the Apocalypse game, and I have sort of cobbled together, even though none of my 3 products actually totally covers the game that I'm running right now, but like I have used it where I just write down these details in like lists in my like sort of campaign notebook, and I'll just flip over to it and take a look at some of the like very basic details, like about their personality or about their goals or whatever. And if there's details like I already had in mind, then I can just ignore the entries about how they look. But I had no idea. I hadn't really given any thought to like how this NPC would behave, or if
Right.
I did, like I know I want them to be like a fair and like noble person, but there's like a darker side to their personality. And like, oh, well, as it turns out, this table says that they are like fair, but also like manipulative. And
Mhm.
that just adds like so much more depth because my mind, at least, will tend to like associate personality traits together based on like my own like assumptions.
Mhm.
And so all of the like fair and noble and just NPCs will tend to also be like a little, lawful stupid. Because that's just how I imagine those like NPCs going together. And if I try and stretch away from that, I can a little bit, but like I just have those little biases. So I use these tables to like force unintuitive combinations, and through that it like expands the like scope of possibility for things that could be. And like that was kind of that was kind of the whole like idea, was that like I want all the entries to combine together in ways that can seem at odds with each other, and then the fun little challenge is to try and make like a bandit that is like daring, economical, and like unethical like work, with the fact that their secret is that they like broke one of their like gang's orders or whatever, and they secretly want to like escape their life of crime. Like it's it's supposed to be things that like force you to like you know like rip start like a like an imagination session, but without by taking off a little bit of the mental burden.
I think too what you're driving at is that you're trying to help people get outside of their even subconscious go-tos.
Yeah.
Which is a valuable thing because we all have those tendencies, right? You may tend to make all your shopkeepers be a certain way
Mhm.
just because in your head, like you said, you associate certain things with certain things, and this can help you get out of that. And I don't know. I have always like I like random tables as random tables, but I also like looking at them, and I'll get about are you familiar with Cyberpunk Red and or Cyberpunk 2020?
Yes. Like actually, the first product that I made, Darker Futures, literally was made as a genericized version of a bunch of tables I made for a Cyberpunk Red game.
Okay. I really like, and for those that don't know, those two games have, in character creation, they have this thing called Life Path. And they are tables not unsimilar to these, although I think less detailed, that like kind of guide you through not just having a character with stats and skills, but having a character with a personality and a little bit of history. And the value for me in that sometimes is I don't know, so I can roll, or oh, I like that one, or that idea is cool, but what if I took that and made it a little different? And to me, that's where like this type of product is great because it's a imagination Kickstarter. Not in Kickstarter in the fundraising sense, but to get your imagination flowing type thing.
Yeah, no, that was the like intention, to be something that, obviously, since they're system agnostic, there's always going to be a little bit more work to do past it, unless of course this is just an NPC that like the players are talking to, and you're like never going to roll anything for them. But if it's like a social NPC or whatever, like the players might have to make a social check against them, and then you kind of have to figure out like, okay, well, what would be this like the difficulty of this person or whatever to convince them or to lie to them or something. But that I've always found that like coming up with a couple of quick numbers is a lot easier than trying to come up with like, what is this guy's personality and why is he not just like guard number 25?
Right. But see, to me, that's where this, like in my brain, what happened when I saw this, your book, and went, this is great for making those and just having a stack of those pick up one NPCs for that random character that the players start interacting with. That, well, like you said, in your mind when you're describing this scene, there's a lot of like kind of vague, faceless people, and now all of a sudden they want to walk up to one, and now it has to have a face. And I
Mhm.
could take this and sit down for half an hour, and generate a couple dozen random NPCs on cards that I just now when I need one, I grab one, right? Kind of like that list of names, except now you've got more than just a name.
Yeah, they're made to be like if you do it before the session, then you can spend a little bit more time giving them a little bit more detail, or you can like write them down nicely and organize them. I also made every single all of the products, and for all the rest of the ones that I'm gonna do in this line, all of the pages are like self-contained.
Mhm.
So if you want to make a wizard, or if you want to go to like groups and factions and you want to make like a scholarly organization or a an animal in the like monsters and beasts section, all the tables that you need to make that thing according to the like core facets that I've like considered to be necessary to come up with something that seems like whole enough,
Mhm.
all on one page, so that if you that the books all have print on demand. I'm getting the print on demand one for Deeper Dungeons. That there's a whole thing about like getting those approved and stuff. It takes a while. You got to get it mailed to you and stuff. But if you didn't have the like print on demand ones that come in hardcover, then you could just print the page out.
Mhm.
And if you wanted to, and the players want to talk to this bandit that they decided not to kill, and they're like, actually, they do the thing like, actually, this bandit is now gonna be like the party pet, essentially.
Mhm.
And we're gonna, make him into our like servant or whatever. And he's gonna
Players
be
would
like a
never do that.
no, no, of course not. My players have never like hard focused on the like assistant of a random shopkeeper in like the magic shop in the random village, and they're like, this is going to be the focus of the rest of the campaign. I'm like, cool, fine. um but like in those kind of cases, like if you can sort of if you're getting that happening, you'd be like, 5-minute break, and then just go over and quickly like drop a few dice on a page. Everything's d10s, so if you've got just drop a few d10s on the page, put them on the piece of paper across the tables, and then you can like write them down on a piece of paper, or just if you've got a really good memory, you can just memorize it. Or even if you don't need to memorize everything, it just gives you a little bit of inspiration, and it's something that sort of takes away that little moment of, oh god, what am I gonna do?
Right? Like this is your not a get out of jail free card, but it's that life preserver to hang on to in those moments, which I think is it's great for that too. Like you said, it's one page for each thing, so there you go. like, even if you're using it electronically from the PDF, you scroll to that page on your tablet, do your thing real quick, and you've got it. So I do, and I guess I should say, I do appreciate how quick and easy it is. My mental state a lot of times when I'm running games, if I have to stop the creative flow I'm in too much, it jumbles me. And so that's where, like, in my mind, I'm leaning to just, a stack of random quickly generated NPCs that I can just grab one, and now, I jot down a real quick note that, oh, this is where, Aloysius, the warden of the king's game lands, that's this guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I just like it. I'm sorry. I mean, for what I'm saying, you're what, $5 a piece for these for the PDFs? I mean, heavens, I could get $5 a use out of this in an afternoon, no problem.
No, yeah, they're things that I want. They're things that I want people to use, and there's a ton of. I'm not gonna say that like a random table book is a revolutionary product. There are like lots of these. I wanted to make this distinct from all of those by the like multi-table. I just call them generators. I don't fully know if that's like a somewhat underused, unused term, or if I'm using it differently, but I just call them that because they're not like just a table. They're like I use like 6 or 5 or 4 or 7 or 10 or whatever different tables, pretty much always with 5 or 10 items. Every once in a while you'll come across one that has like 20 or 30 things, and they're usually like a D100 instead of a D10.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be a combination of those various things that sort of combine together to like make the end product, and through that it makes it more reusable, and also it allows for those unintuitive combinations.
Right. Well, like I said, I'm looking at just the page I happen to have up on my screen is the Hunters and Gamekeepers. So you've got 2 3-column tables of 10 at the top, which off the top of my head, that's, see, 1,000 different combinations just in the first 2 things, and then you've got 4 more boxes below that.
Don't quote me on this. If I'm remembering my statistics class, I would think for the Hunters and Gamekeepers, for most of them, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That would be 10 to the 10th different combinations.
Right.
Which
is off a little bit, but
which is like, it's like tens of like billions, or like billions of combinations or something like that.
Well, let's see. So
theoretically,
the first, just the description section has 1,000 different combinations because it's 10 times 10 times 10, which would be 10 times 10 is 100, 100 times 10 is 1,000. And so you just keep adding zeros onto the end of that, and that's a lot. A billion, I think.
Yeah, it'd be 10 to 10 would be 10 billion.
Yeah. Gamers and math, not good combination typically.
Yeah. When it's a multiplication, I'm like, hold on, I'm just going to pull up my calculator.
Right, but yeah, and that's literally one page. Now, what all do you have in here? Because, I mean, I've been focusing anyway on the NPCs, but I know you said you've got stuff for monsters, and I haven't scrolled that far down yet.
Yeah, so of the 3 products, Further Stars is the largest one, and when I made the first book, Darker Futures, I think it had 67 pages, and I thought like, okay, I could add a little bit more, and then with Further Stars, I went to like 100 pages, and when I finished with that, I'm like, okay, that's a bit much. I want to keep this around the like $5 price mark, and I'm like, okay, it's a lot of work to try and do that. So I pared it down a little bit for Deeper Dungeons, which I think is 76-ish pages of content.
Mm-hmm.
And across like all the generators, and I do have some D100 tables at the end for like random loot and things like that. But yeah, for Deeper Dungeons, I've got like a groups and factions section, which covers things like adventuring parties and guilds and merchant companies and military and mercenary companies, religions, cults, societies and conspiracies for like, your sort of noble like court plot to overthrow the king or whatever. There's a short section on settlements for making like a random city and town or a village. And for each of the products, I try to have like a few sections that are unique to the tropes of that genre. So for Darker Futures, there is no like quote unquote faction generation. There's a gang generator because it was made from tables for a Cyberpunk Red game. So like the presence of gangs everywhere in when I was making it Night City, they're everywhere. They're like the thing you're interacting with all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But when I expanded it to Further Stars for like all of sci-fi, I'm like, okay, well, it can't just be gangs. It needs to be like a bunch of different types of factions. So it started getting into things like governments and empires and political factions and things like that. But for like the sci-fi one, for like custom categories, essentially. Like I have one for planets, just random planets. And I have one for like buildings specifically, not just like locations, but like specific buildings, because like mega buildings are going to be something that's like a big focus. Going through this like giant mega structure, that building can be distinct from the landscape around it. But if you go to Deeper Dungeons, where it's like fantasy, there may be some buildings like a monastery or a cathedral or a dungeon or something. Those may be distinct, but I imagine that like in a medieval village, like a lot of the buildings are going to look much more similar. So I have locations there. But for the fantasy, for Deeper Dungeons, I have something for monsters and beasts. Because various like magical monsters is going to be a thing, and also one for magic items as well, because magic items are super important for that type of genre. And so I plan to keep doing that for the rest of the time, having at least a couple of quote unquote custom categories of things for each one.
Darker Futures, do you have like tech gadgetry, like a table for tech gadgets, or did you not get that far in that one, being as that was like the first one you did?
So Darker Futures, when you look at it, you'll be able to tell it's the first one I did. Just the design of the pages is definitely like, this is the first time someone's like tried to do graphic design on a book. But I think it did well enough. But it also is, I folded a lot more into just the miscellaneous generators section, because I didn't really have a totally best idea of how to categorize things at the time. So a lot of it got folded into the miscellaneous section. But I do have things for like artificial intelligences and black market bazaars, corporate conspiracies and corporate conflicts as well. Custom vehicles, popular media and celebrities, because it's based on cyberpunk. I've got one for space stations and ships in there, but like that's one thing. When you go to Further Stars, ships are a whole section. There's like 5 different pages of just spaceships because it's sci-fi,
right? And like, so I have to ask, just because I don't think we ever had this conversation in person, what is kind of what are your go-to games? Because based on our conversation thus far, I don't think you have one.
So for a while, I tended to shift between A few games. Well, at first it was D&D was like the thing that I started on. Originally 3.5, and then moving over to 5th edition. I tried 4th edition. I found it fun, but not very many other people did.
I have opinions on 4th edition. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I was addicted to World of Warcraft at the time, so I was like, cool. This is familiar. No, but I expanded to a couple of things like Mutants and I played Mutants and Masterminds for a while. I ran a game of Mutants and Masterminds. That was really fun. I played a game of Pathfinder for a little while. That was fun. And I like shifted around a couple of like really well-known games. Call of Cthulhu for a little bit. That sort of thing, until I decided that I wanted to start like really expanding my horizons. And that is when I found like, okay, that's where I came across Star Wars, the FFG Star Wars. They had just released Age of Rebellion when I first got into that, and then I just played that for a little while as well, because like I hadn't really done a sci-fi game, and that's where I discovered like, I really like things like sci-fi and future and like tech sort of stuff. I really like the sort of familiar unfamiliarity of like high tech and this thing is like, it's like a cell phone, but it's like cooler, and it's got a little hologram of like a dude that talks to you in a British like accent or whatever, and that means it's like really advanced because it sounds British.
Obviously.
But like there's and then I started expanding out to other stuff as well, and I started trying to get into like indie games then. So I started picking up things that were like smaller games, like I mean, if I look behind me, I've got like the Root RPG. That was really fun. I started going into like Fantasy Age. I wouldn't call that necessarily indie, but they're smaller.
Yeah, I have that in my stack here somewhere.
And then eventually I got into I started getting into things where I'm like, okay, I want to start picking up things that you like can download off of itch. So you start getting into things like Yaziba's Bed and Breakfast, and found games like Brindlewood Bay before it turned into the whole thing it is now, which is great. I love the game. But that there things like that, and I just keep trying to, sometimes in vain, cajole my players into trying really weird games. And I'm like, hey, I picked this thing up off of itch like a little while ago, or I'm play testing this game. And I signed up for a playtest for this. And they're like, cool. I'm like, I'm going to run it. And like, I guess. I'm like, well, I'm running the game. So you want to play a game? This is what I'm doing tonight. And they're like, all right, I guess. All right.
Yeah, but see, and I've said this before, I find so many of these smaller production house games, I'll say it that way as opposed to indie, because I don't even know what indie means at this point, right? Like, okay, WotC is clearly not indie. The Asmodee influence over FFG now, Edge, I don't know, like, but the stuff when they were FFG, they had an indie vibe to them, right? But when you get into stuff like last fall, I got to interview Brian Colin, who's the creator behind Vastgrim, which is a sci-fi hack of Morkborg. That it's great book. It's great fun to play. I actually got to play it with him running at our local convention. But the vibe I got from him, and I get from so many small creators, is, look, I made this thing that's fun. Won't you come share my fun?
Yeah.
And you don't get that in some of the bigger games. Like I've played Mutants and Masterminds, and I've been fortunate I got to play it. Every time I've played it, it's been run by the guy who is now one of the lead devs for the game. When I first met him, he was a freelancer. And this guy, Alex Thomas, knows the game front, back, sideways. And look, you having run it, it's kind of a crunchy system.
Oh yeah.
It's not when he runs it.
Wow.
Like he knows it that well.
Yeah,
Um,
I've seen that with like a lot of larger games as well. Like if you get someone who was developing the game, sometimes sometimes they run it so well that they just don't like it runs so smoothly because they like literally never need to reference the book at all. Other times I've also found that like especially for some of the larger games, the creators tend to be the people who ignore the most rules.
well, but see, and this is something I brought up a couple episodes ago. I think too, I find myself I want to play in the spirit of the game.
Yeah.
I don't care so much about the specific rules.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
more, hey, let's all mutually understand what it is we're going for, and let's just go for it. And we'll use the rules as necessary, but like we're not going to worry about the nitty-gritty details unless we have to.
Yeah, I think that like for people who have worked on these games, like they're able to run it so well because they're like, I know what this game is supposed to do. I know how it's supposed to feel. I don't need the rules to try and help me towards that end because I already know.
Right. No, that's exactly it. Like, yeah, they know the feeling that those rules were trying to generate, and so they can go straight to that as opposed to trying to interpret the rule into the thing it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Okay, no, that makes total sense.
And that's where like I love to kind of come back to your products here, right? These are very much leaning on the feel of the world, the character, whatever. Look, can I share a dirty trick that I have used running Cyberpunk Red or 2020 for random skill generation when oh crap, I need them to roll against something? I
Sure,
roll
yeah.
2d6 plus a d10.
Hmm.
Because if you think about it, normal roll in that system is skill plus stat plus d10.
Yeah.
Skill and stat normally aren't going to be super high for your average NPC. So 2d6 makes more sense to me than 3d10.
Yeah.
That's literally, I've done that at the table. Like, oh crap, I need to roll up. And sometimes I'll jot down the 2d6 numbers on my thing is this is their stat, this is their skill for subsequent rolls. But like, yeah, gosh, I am definitely going to be using a couple of these books because I have a game that I actually ran it at this year's GamerNationCon twice, and a combination of Darker Futures and Further Stars will definitely work for this game.
Oh, I'm planning to use Further Stars quite a bit because next year's GamerNationCon is Star Trek, so there's absolute like it's perfect for that. I mean, that was one of the like direct inspirations for that product anyway, and it's also the biggest one, so that helps.
Yeah, no, and see, I will say I am not a Trekkie at all. I've tried a couple times and I just don't get into the shows, but I also am very fond of like seeing how I can take the theme and just turn it on its head in a way that works, but no one was expecting.
Yeah,
Like, like
and Star Trek. Sorry, yeah, keep going.
so 2 years ago, when the theme was Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, right?
Mhm.
I ran Men in Black,
Kind of
and
ironic for
w-
this past
well,
year. Kind of
well, it would have worked for this too, but I
yeah.
put Tolkien in the Men in Black universe with one tiny step because I don't know
What
if
was that?
you know this. J.R.R. Tolkien, in real life, worked for the British military in code breaking. So, tiny
Huh.
step going from code breaking to what we would now call like signals intelligence. Lord of the Rings was not a work of fiction. It was a dramatic retelling of intercepted alien signals.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was the
That's really cool.
basis for the whole thing. And the whole thing kind of leans off with, you remember from the original Men in Black, the aliens that lived inside the heads of like fake people. The little
Oh,
tiny
yeah,
ones. I forget what.
yeah. I
That's
don't
the.
I know they all had names. All those aliens had
Oh, I
names.
don't
I don't
remember
remember
either.
any of them.
But that was the hobbits in Hobbiton.
Huh. That's they're all like driven people.
Like, but like I said, it's one little tiny step, and it actually makes sense, which is what the whole bizarrest part of it was to me. Like, but it was great fun, and I actually too, um, the first session I ran of it, one of the players had actually visited the Hobbiton set in New Zealand.
I
And
want
so
to
that
go.
added, like, so much depth to things we could 'cause she's going, "Oh, yeah, and they have a cat that runs around, and its name," and I don't remember, I wanna say it was Peanut, but, there's a cat that runs around, and then, "Oh, wait, there's a cat?" Again, original Men in Black. Where's the whole thing they're looking for? The cat's necklace.
Oh yeah,
I'm like, "Oh gosh, that's too good not to use now."
of course. No, that's such a cool little concept to just be like that it changes the vibe of like every I really like that idea of like hobbits being like sort of android vehicles.
Mhm. Like I said, and it was like I said, okay, yes, was it absurd? But that also, like the other thing I like to do at GamerNationCon is I like to run weird stuff. Stuff that people may not either realize exists or just haven't heard of. And it felt like, grabbing the old West End games, Men in Black, was just something along that vein. And to be able to twist it into the theme in a way that actually made perfect sense, to me was too much fun to pass up.
No, yeah, that's it's cool. And for like, yeah, you could say like, oh, it seems silly, but I feel like especially if you're running like one shots like you would
Oh,
be at a con, um it's I would find it extremely difficult to build like the sort of dramatic tension that gets built over time, and if you try and force it, it just kind of ends up coming out comedic anyway. So
mhm,
like leaning into like a little bit more comedy, a little bit more absurdity, it comes pretty naturally in a one shot anyway, especially cuz like at least someone at the table is going to be like, this character is only going to be here for the next 4 hours, so I'm just going to, drive them like they're a stolen car.
right. But see, now let me ask you this: as a GM, and you said you told me, I think before we started recording that you've been doing a bunch of convention work lately as a GM and whatnot. Do you find yourself, for lack of a better way to say it, like, do you turn it up to 11 for con games, just more intense, a little more over the top, not necessarily over the top necessarily in a silly way, but like overemphasized because one, it's a short one shot, and I think two, kind of, what do you want to say, making it louder, more brilliant, more vivid helps because in a convention environment there's so much literal background noise.
Yeah, and yes, I would say yes in pretty much all cases. I think the degree to which you like ham it up sort of depends on like why you're at the con. Like I ran in California, we have a small I mean, I guess I wouldn't call it small anymore. It's a 3 times a year board game RPG convention called Strategicon.
Okay.
Happens like right across from LAX. So extremely busy. Parking's really expensive. But it gets a good number of people there. But like, I'm not like an exhibitor there. So if I ran it when I ran games there, I would still ham it up because I'm trying to entertain a bunch of people. But I'm usually playing a game that like I kind of I kind of chose like just out of like all the things that I wanted to, and I've got like kind of a story that I kind of want to tell. But if I'm at like when I was at PAX Unplugged, and I was running games for Edge Studios, like I was there trying to sell Arkham Horror to people. So like I was I was like way hamming it up, and also because that room was just really loud.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I don't know how we got to that conversation, but it's gamer talk, so it's cool.
Huh.
Like, so you've got the three out now, the three products. Um, are you kind of alluded to you're working on other ones? Are you working on stuff for like other genres? Just to throw it out there, like cosmic horror or anything else?
Yeah, so I've got the one that I should say I'm working on two at the moment, and then I have several others sort of jotted down in a book of ideas. The next one is gonna be like a modern like horror sort of thing, sort of inspired by the fact that I've recently run a vampire the Masquerade game, and now I'm running a werewolf game.
Mm-hmm.
And also because when I was fishing around for like, what would be the next thing? Someone who bought one of the other products is like, hey, you could make this one. I'm like, all right, well, like everything is just sort of sitting in a soup until my next idea, so I'll go with that one. So like the next one's gonna be like a modern horror sort of thing. And I'm planning on there being like tables for like, supernatural factions and like, what are the like conspiracies of like the vampire lord in the area or whatever, stuff like that. I
Mm-hmm.
don't really know yet, but I'm slowly working on it. I am also looking at expanding these sort of similar products into some community content programs. So one specifically for the Android setting
Mm-hmm.
in Genesis Foundry.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the cool thing with that is that since I can actually tie that to a system, I can actually start including like tables that actually do help you generate like the stats of an NPC,
Mm-hmm.
or give like difficulty numbers for encounters rather than the encounters being like a vague description of like what's kind of happening, and then you fill in the details from there. But I could expand that to like specifically like a werewolf one doing the like storyteller's vault.
Mm-hmm.
Or as you said, like I could do a generic cosmic horror one, and I could also do a specific Call of Cthulhu
Mm-hmm.
version under the Miskatonic Repository. I
Repository.
think that's
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. So stuff like that. I would have loved to publish my first one with all the cyberpunk stuff actually in it. But as far as I know, at the moment, RTAL doesn't have like a community content program, so
No, they're
I left
typi-
those up.
they're typically very supportive of fan generated content, but they
Yeah.
don't allow it to be sold.
Yeah, that's why like I still have all of those like original cyberpunk tables. They're not nicely formatted or anything, and they don't have like write-ups on them like I did for the book. But they're still up on my itch page. I just left them there, and those are free, and those do reference like actual like cyberpunk red stuff, like the like hustles, and they reference things like fixers and rocker boys and stuff like that, the like
Mhm.
the words that I can't use in a system generic product.
Yeah, but I feel like, well, see, the other thing is Red being descendant from 2020/2013. That was the game that started the genre. So those terms are like, yeah, maybe they're copyrighted, but boy, we all know, you've got the charismatic, musician, whatever. That's a rocker boy.
Yeah,
Look, if you and I are sitting down to play Android, you're going to describe a character at the table as a rocker boy, and I know exactly what you mean. I mean, I'm not, I don't mean to presume. I'm just saying that, like, for those of us who are kind of into that genre, that's just part of our vocabulary. We don't think of it as a copyrighted game term, so to speak.
No,
Or I
yeah,
don't.
and like in the book, I call them hackers, because that's just like a generic term. When I run a game, even if it's not like specifically Cyberpunk Red in Night City or whatever, I'm gonna call them a netrunner.
Yeah, Netrunner, or what is it? Deckers was the term in Shadowrun, but
For
that
Shadowrun,
also
yeah.
those are, yeah, hacker. Look, yeah, there are those terms that we all use, and like I also appreciate something that you did in these books, and it's a little thing, but the fact that your lines are separated by a slight background color makes the table so much easier to read.
Yeah, so
Like your
that
entries.
yeah. Well, I had a lot of I've had a lot of help with understanding how to make things easy to read. I have a good friend who they are they're just part of like home games, but they are dyslexic and somewhat severely so. So I use them as kind of a yardstick on like can you read this? And I have had to change some things every once in a while, but they like little colored bars. They like alternating colored bars against like a different background. They like look nice and clean to me. And they also pass the most of the time pass the dyslexic test.
Oh yeah, but like it's little stuff like that, and I love hearing that you're, even because let's be honest, uh, you're a small time creator. Like you're doing this to share your fun, so to speak.
Oh
Like
yeah.
you know, let's be honest, even the professionals aren't getting rich making RPG games,
Oh yeah. I have made tens of dollars on these products.
right? And you've probably spent 6 times that in software.
Oh yeah.
You know, and like but I appreciate that you're making an effort, even if it is just with someone who has, you know, some, we'll say, issues with it, but you're taking the time to make it more user friendly, even for people with concerns, and that's cool. Like for as much as like people talk about the Morkborg games, and I know people who like, man, the game seems cool, but I just can't read it with the fonts and the this and the that. And I appreciate that, although in those particular games, to me, that graphic choice is part of the aesthetic of the game, so I don't know how you get around it. But I don't know. Am I making any sense?
No, I get it. And like I am not dyslexic, but for things like Morkborg especially, I love looking at the book, but yes, like that game is an extreme example of something that was like they focused heavily on design, and I don't know how you would divorce it from the design of the book. Like it's supposed to be like a black metal album in a game. uh but I can totally get that people will have trouble reading that. There are some pages that I struggle with.
Oh yeah, and like I said, but see, like this is where, like in a sense, and I know, I've talked with Gavriel Quiroga, who did Warpland and Hell Knight and a couple other games,
Mhm.
and he does some stuff that's in that vein. Specifically, Hell Knight was very much like that. But Gav really considers himself an artist first and a game designer second. And I don't know, like the tools that you're making are very much tools. And like that's the other thing is like, look, your graphic design serves what you're doing, but like I'm not noticing, at least in the what I've scrolled through, any real amount of like interior artwork. It's all the information, but that's what I'm coming to the book for. So that's cool.
Yeah, I don't especially because I had I had no idea if any of this was going to like make any money at all. And there's art is like it's not super expensive, but it's not cheap. And I don't want to like go and find interior artwork that either like doesn't work or try and like abuse some artists' need or like desire to undersell their own work. But there's also the fact that like I just don't have I can't justify like putting in $100 of art into a book when like at the beginning like I didn't know if I was gonna make like $50 off of these products at all. And I know they say like artwork sells books, and it like I that happens to me as well. Like I will often take a longer look at a book if it's got some cool pictures on the inside. It's got some cool artwork on the inside. But I just decided to go with like I will try and find a royalty-free image on the cover to like draw people in, and then like some available free like border designs to give it some flavor, but I'm not really going to include any artwork. I'm going to rely on the border designs, the coloration, and the like fonts to sell it. Maybe later like I'll go back in. I've always had the idea that like I might go back in and add some artwork to these things to the PDFs of these things later as like a a little gift for people who have already bought the PDFs, and then they just get like an update with like, hey, this thing has art now.
No, I think that's really cool. And like I said, I really just skimming the little bit that I have, I really like these, and I find them great inspirational tools. And like, I mean, even if you're getting ready to start a campaign, and like you said, you've got faction generators, and look, you need a bunch of those, and even if you've got a loose idea, well, I want a faction that does this. Use these tables to flesh that faction out a little more, right? And maybe along the way you go, oh well, oh wait, I need an opposing faction to this faction, so you know what I mean? Like it takes some of the heavy lifting out of it instead of having to just come up with it all. And I think, like you pointed out all the way in the beginning too, it can help you get out of your default go-tos, which will make your worlds, your games that much more like rich and varied.
Yeah. And it's things that like not only I have found, not only do like I get a little bit more just on the stuff that I roll for, and I can then take that and try and integrate it, but just like it's like taking sometimes it's like taking a hammer and just like breaking the glass open, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, well, I could modify these things a little bit, and the second time I may not need the table at all, because this sort of thing spawns 5, 10, 15 different ideas off in this direction to combine this way, and it's all stuff that just sort of came from like one initial seed of like connecting two neurons that were like way far apart in my brain, and then like sort of dragging one neuron over to the other and cramming them together, and then suddenly like there's a whole new like avenue open.
Right? Exactly. All right. So what you've got the three out now under Bright Sun Games: Deeper Dungeons, Darker Futures, and Further Stars.
Yep.
Anything else you want to plug or anything like that before we start, going into the wrap up phase? Social medias, anything like that, where people can find you, or a website, or anything like that?
Yeah. So I've got my website is brightsungames.com. I am on Blue Sky at, I believe, it's like Adam_BSG, or AdamB_BSG. I'm trying to get like my social
Adam
media presence on.
BSG to bluesky.social.
Yes. And I'm also at Instagram, I think under the same thing. I just made that Instagram account. I'm trying to learn to post more. Maybe that's a good thing.
I am horrible at social media.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like I'm trying to build like a community profile if I'm going to like be doing more of this sort of stuff. Cuz like I've also got ideas for like actual games, like
Mhm.
little indie games to publish eventually. But those are all sort of in the miasma and the sort of, primordial soup at the moment. They'll get out there eventually. I'm still waiting for the lizards to emerge.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to come and talk with me and talk about these products. And hopefully, some of our listeners, I think InstaWin in particular, one of our people on our Discord, some of this seems right up his alley. Whether or not they choose to buy them, I don't know. But look, they're useful tools. They're inexpensive, and they're fun.
Thank you.
So, with that, I think it's. You ready to do game of the week?
Sure. Yep.
Game of the week. Game of the week.
All right. So, would you like me to go first, just so you have a little more of a feel for it? I know I explained it to you before we started recording.
Yeah, sure. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Let me. And I actually am going to go with something. I literally found this today and I bought it. And why the heck is the page not loading? Okay. So, I will drop a link so you can see this in our Green Room channel. This is something. And I might find myself using some of your books in conjunction with this. This is a book supplement something. It's called Solo Micro RPG, a practical guide to fast solo play. And what this is about a 100-page book. Now, based on the skim I gave it, it is pretty much all text, but it's kind of combining like the real light micro RPGs that can be a lot of fun with solo gaming and kind of helping you walk through and explore it. Again, I haven't gotten a chance to read it a ton, but it seems like a really cool, like, okay, you want to get into solo RPGs, but all the oracles and the this and the that are kind of daunting, and how much stuff do I have to have scattered around me on the table to make all this work? And this feels, again, from the brief thing I went through it, like there's one here, if I'm not mistaken, let me scroll through it here. There's like solo games that are like they've got examples set up in here that are like a page. And no, it's going to be a quick, like, 20-30 minute game. But like, okay, here's one. It's called Secrets in Space. And the concept is you're the last surviving sentient AI aboard a starship adrift out in space. You need a die, a D6, a piece of paper, and a pen. You write down ship status, critical, processing power, and the core loop is you roll a D6 and you generate either a glitch, a data fragment, or an insight. Glitch decreases your processing power and you roll on the anomaly table. And so it's just kind of prompts to kind of help you work through the concept of solo play easier. And I don't know, it felt to me like for the all of $4 that this thing cost, like it might be a good entry step if you want to try some solo stuff. Because I know it mentions further into the book, it goes into some of the journaling style games and that kind of thing. So I don't know. For $4, I mean, I bought it and I want to check it out more. I've been working a lot lately, so my time to do anything has been severely cramped. But that's mine. It's called Solo Micro RPG. And like always, we'll put links to all this stuff in the show notes. So, all right,
That's cool.
mine.
Yeah. That's cool. I haven't really gotten into micro RPGs or solo RPGs yet.
I haven't
It's
tried
something
solo.
I gotta. Yeah, I've seen
Micros
all.
are- Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I've seen all these like solo journaling RPGs, stuff like that, and I've always wondered like, what does that like even mean? But now this seems for $4, yeah, no, that for $4 I'll try anything.
Well, yeah, right. For $4, I mean, what? That'll buy you a energy drink at the corner store,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent more than $4 on like coffee. So
Right. Oh, and this is new too. This literally came out yesterday, which as we're speaking, it's now tomorrow, so it came out the day I found it.
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
You picked it up immediately. All right,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, so for the game that I found, I'll post this one as well. This is a Kickstarter. So
Okay.
I've got a bunch of ideas for, like, I've got a bunch of little games in my head that are, that would be really cool, but like most of them are already Kickstarters that have already funded, or games that aren't out yet, or stuff like that. So like they're not really actionable. This game is still actionable for anybody who like hears this for a little while at least. It's called
Mhm.
Galactic and Going Rogue. Uh, Now, based on that, it is actually two games in one, apparently, and they're both like cool little GM-less games. I don't like totally know how either of them would work, but I do remember seeing Going Rogue a couple of years ago, and it won a crit award in 2023 for best GM-less game of the year.
Mhm.
Galactic, I think, is newer, um,
Okay.
but it's actually two games shoved into one. And the thing that really like got me interested in it is just the sort of novelty that like these are like two different games put together in one book that is just like I haven't really seen that much at all. I love things that are sci-fi in pretty much any kind. The cover sort of shows me that like it's gonna be the kind of like tone of game that I think I'll really like. There's a good the artwork is like pretty cool looking. The Kickstarter has several different tiers for like a book of like various advancements in like fiction as well. And out of the whole development team, I haven't heard of most of the people on the development team, but I have heard of Jess Levine, or Levine, I think, and I've heard of Will Jobst. And Jess Levine, like I've heard of her, but I haven't really done any of her games. Will Jobst is their editor. If you've ever heard of a game called This Discord Has Ghosts in It, it's a really cool little game that you play on a Discord channel.
Mhm.
It's really cool, and Will also has like several other games as well, but like that game is his like big, like sort of out there award winning game as well. So like his sort of presence on the development team, which is huge, by the way. There's like a ton of people, and they've
Mhm.
got them all listed out. But it's a really like it's a great looking Kickstarter. The games are like I'm sure they're great. It looks like it's the design of the books looks really nice. The artwork looks the cartoony but not bad. Like
It's
good.
it's it's
Like a good
animated,
sort
but
of
it's a
animated.
very specific flavor of animation, and I get the vibe from it. I don't know how to describe it, but I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, it's so just the the 2-for-1 deal and the presence of a couple people that I know put out good and interesting games. This one was pointed out to me yesterday by a couple other indie developers, and so I said, you know what? All right, I will like if this has gotten recommendations from other people that I know like know good in the good games that I'll try it. So it's something that's actionable for anybody listening if they find it interesting.
Yeah, no, it looks like when this goes live, it'll have about a week left. It's already funded 6 times over. So, and the price of the pledges isn't bad. I mean, like PDF level is like $20. Base print tier is 40, which is not bad at all in the modern, game space, we'll call it. And even like the what do you want to say, the all in before you go to the like oh, cool. There's even a tier where it's like the big tier, but you get like the all in thing, plus you donate 50 community copies of the PDF.
Yeah, that was another thing that I saw. Like, I didn't pledge to that tier. I got the tier with all 3 hardcover books.
Like the book set one, like the $90 one.
It was the $60
Or no,
one.
the
It was
60.
their,
Okay, yeah. But
yeah.
still, that's not a bad price for 3 books.
Yeah, I mean, I've paid $60 for 1 book.
Right? I have too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the most expensive RPG book I have was like 80, but that's like
Yeah.
almost 800 pages.
Yeah, I mean, like when the company that made Degenesis was going out, although I think they're back now, and they did their like, here, buy whatever we've got left. I got one of their like box sets, and that was like $180 or something. So like I'm not unused to like RPGs costing a lot.
Oh yeah, I mean I've gone into Kickstarters for significantly more than this.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I've got to offer.
Cool. And that's called Galactic and Going Rogue. And again, like like I said before, we'll put links to all this in the show notes. But yeah, this looks cool. Oh, so cool. Thank you for bringing that up. That's cool. So yeah, like I said before, thank you for coming to join us. I hope we made your world creator debut on a podcast somewhat unstressful and exciting, or at least enjoyable.
No, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, not a problem. And I think I look forward to seeing you again next year at GamerNationCon. Hopefully, maybe we actually get to share a table at some point. Like you said, with the way that schedules fill up there, it's just crazy sometimes. So, like I
I
said,
should
with
have
all that,
early registration. So
woohoo! Yeah. So I think with all that, remind people out there, if you like what you hear, give us a review or a rating or something like that. Or come join the Discord. There's links to that in the show notes, along with links to our various social medias that I don't remember to post to. We do have a YouTube channel, although it's currently just the audio podcast with a static graphic that gets put up there. Maybe someday when I learn how to do the video thing, we'll actually do some real video, but not yet. But if you prefer to listen that way, that's available. There's links to our Patreon and all that kind of fun stuff if you so desire. But I think with all that, just remind everyone to be kind to each other and get out there and play some RPGs.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter at @andrpgs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.